The Chinese economy has been in the headlines again. News of distant economic turmoil. The Chinese stock market erased $5 trillion worth of wealth this summer. I'm an economist, so people ask me all the time to explain this to them. What's going on in China? Why is this happening? Does this matter for me? Should I be worried? Should I be scared? And I know something about these questions, so I do my best to answer them, and I have some answers. But from my friends and family, I often get the sense that we're not quite communicating, that I'm not quite speaking the same language. And I think that the thing that's missing is a question that they haven't asked yet. What is the economy for? What is the economy for? Some parts of it are very close. We can touch them. We do touch them every day. We go to work. We have jobs. We save. We spend. We put gas in our car. Other parts of the economy are a little more abstract. Financial markets, interest rates, monetary policy. Other parts of the economy are more distant still. OPEC, the euro crisis, the Chinese stock market. All of these things are unequivocally part of the economy, but what are they for? What do they do? So to answer this question, I require a small amount of audience participation. You can remain seated. It is a purely psychological form of participation. So I want you to imagine something for me. I want you to imagine something in the future, something that you're going to do, a plan that you have for something tonight, or a year from now, or 5 years from now, something good, something that you want to happen. I want you to think about how the plan that you have in mind, the good thing that you want to happen at some point in your future, depends on somebody else, depends on somebody else's doing something between now and then so that you can do the thing that you want. Last question. What is that person doing today? What is that person thinking right now? What plan is that person making? And does it line up with yours? The economy, the global economy, is the thing that connects all of our plans to one another. It's the thing that connects my plan to yours, and to everybody's, including people a long way away. So when I think about plans, something very simple. A dinner that I want to have a year from now. Not any particular dinner, not any particular evening, just dinner with my family at home at the table. And on the table is food. Where did the food come from? Well, I know the answer to that. I picked it up at the CSA Saturday before. But how did it get there? My farmer today has to be planning so that next summer there are vegetables growing, so that some Saturday next year I can pick them up so that I can have dinner. Now, my farmer happens to be on the program later today, and I checked with her, and she told me our plans are compatible. She used different words. So far, so good, but why do we need to call this the economy? Why is this something special? Well, what about something more distant, something more abstract? What about the Chinese stock market? Some investors in the Chinese stock market thought that the GDP of the Chinese economy could continue to grow at 10% a year indefinitely, that the Chinese leadership could make sure that that growth happened, and that the Chinese banks could continue to extend credit to enable additional borrowing so that all of that could continue to happen. Other people said, this is going to have to come to an end. They can't both be right, so something has to change. And in this case, what had to change is that the stock markets in Shanghai and Shenzhen lost 30% of their value in a couple of weeks this summer. A great economist of the 20th century named Hyman Minsky called this idea coherence. The economy has to be coherent because we all share the same resources. If you eat these vegetables, then I can't. If somebody else burns this gallon of gasoline, then I can't burn the same gallon again. If nobody wants to buy, then I can't sell. And the economy is the thing that connects my plans to yours and to everyone else's so that between today and the day that that future arrives, that all of our plans fit together. It's not always pretty. It's not always nice. It's not always happy. But at the end of the day, our plans have to fit together. So the global economy is the institutions, the governments, the companies, the markets, the traditions that connect our plans to one another and make them all fit together. So if that's what the economy is for, then what is economics for? I teach some economics, as Giovanna mentioned, and my students sometimes ask me this question. In particular, they ask me this question around exam time. They take a minute out of their studying to say, actually, Dan, what is all of this economics for? And do we really need to know this? And I have to admit that sometimes I share their skepticism, because in fact, there's a lot of pretty lousy economics out there. In fact, one of the things I've spent a lot of time on over the last couple of years is a global project working with graduate students and academics, professors, financiers, regulators, to entertain the possibility that we need very different economic ideas for our time, that the problems that we face as a society require new ways of thinking about the economy, new ideas to understand this phenomenon. Economics is a tradition of trying to understand mankind in society and our material and social world. Like all traditions, we inherit it from those who went before, and we bequeath it to those who come after. And in between, it's ours to do with what we need. Some of the traditions that we get from the study of the economy, from economics, are out of date. They're wrong. They're deceptive. They can be abused. Other traditions from the study of the economy are helpful. They respond directly to the problems that people have faced in past times, and they tell us something about what's going on in our time. And those traditions should be kept up to date and should be used. Why things happened so fast in China this summer, why we called it a crisis, something about why we had a crisis here in 2008, 2009. The idea is this. The economy is at its most fragile when everybody starts to believe the same thing. When I look into the future and I can imagine a certain thing, and you look into the future and you imagine precisely the same thing, and everybody looks ahead into the future and we all see precisely the same thing, it's at that moment that we should worry. It's at that moment that the structure of the economy, the structure of humankind in society with our material resources is at its most fragile. Because when we all believe the same thing, the slightest surprise is enough to bring the whole thing down. A crisis. So in 2008, in the years leading up to 2008, in the United States, we all believed the house prices could rise indefinitely. We all believed that mortgage borrowing could go on increasing indefinitely. We all agreed on one future where that process continued indefinitely. We were wrong. And things corrected very quickly. We call that a crisis. Likewise in China. Why did it happen so fast? It happened so fast because so many people believed the same thing at the same time. But we're never exactly right. There's always a surprise. And when we all believe the same thing, the effects of that surprise are that much greater. So the economy is the thing that causes our plans to line up. Sometimes it does a good job. Sometimes it does very, very poorly. Sometimes it creates wealth. Sometimes it creates poverty. Sometimes the economy creates opportunity. Sometimes the economy destroys opportunity. Economics is a tradition for studying that. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it tells us what to do. Sometimes it gives us a sense of reason about what's happening in our world. Other times, it's misleading. It's deceptive. There's a third question, which is important to me. What are economists for? It's a personal question. We have economists who teach, economists who work in banks, economists who work in government, economists who write in the New York Times. We have economists who work for ourselves. What are these people for? I will not presume to answer the question For everyone, I know a lot of those guys, and we don't all agree all the time. But I will answer it for myself. For me, to be an economist is to have a way to see the connections between ourselves and our world and the things that are very close and the world beyond. With people, some of whom are close, some of whom I know their names. I talk to them. My kids go to school with their kids. Some of them are very, very far. I don't know their names. I will never meet them, and I couldn't speak their language if I did. But we are connected. We breathe the same air. We stand on the same earth. We share the same oil. The study of the economy can tell us how our lives are connected to theirs, because they are. Our lives affect theirs, and theirs affect ours. The people who are close and the people who are far. Economics is a way of understanding how all of our lives are connected to one another. It is not always pretty. It is not always nice. It is not always happy. And so I think this perspective is not for everyone, but it is for me. Thank you.